Soul, and I just thought I'd take a little bit of time today to talk about something I just really love talking about, which is mythology. Today I'll just be going over some things about Zeus. Okay, so first of all, Zeus kinda gets a bad rap about his affairs, and while he was almost extraordinarily indiscreet and also quite terrible at being discreet with them, he did certainly have his place as the ruler of the gods. Although, okay, so one thing is that Zeus didn't really earn his place as the ruler of Olympus. I mean, he was the only child of Kronos, Kronos being the epitome of an absolutely terrible dad. Like, the kind of dad where you buy him a mug that says worst father ever and he wouldn't even be offended. Which is what you get for eating all your kids, I guess. Anyways, so Zeus was the only child not to get swallowed up, and he was the one who figured out the plan to get the rest of his siblings out to stage a rebellion. But it's not like he planned to get switched up with a rock as a baby. Anyways, when the gods overthrew the Titans, Zeus and his two most powerful siblings, Poseidon and Hades, got together and decided that they should split up the world and not fight over it. And what do you suppose would be the method that makes the most sense? A contest of wits, perhaps? A display of power? Nah, let's draw lots. Yep, draw lots. They gambled ownership of Olympus, the seas, and the realm of the dead. Talk about high stakes. And it's no wonder Hades is so glum. So yeah, that's how Zeus got Olympus. He got lucky. Of course, Zeus had some actual jobs. One of the aspects that Zeus purveyed over is that of the concept of Xenia, which led to his sometimes epithet of Zeus Xenios. Essentially, in Greek culture, travelers, as long as they're not entering a place grossly above their station, were to be welcomed and taken care of. If you've read A Song of Ice and Fire, the notion and its sanctity are similar to that of guest right. This was implemented in order to make the traveler's job less difficult, because traveling could be very dangerous in those days. One of the better known instances of the enforcement of Xenia involves Zeus and his son Hermes deciding at some point to check in with how humanity was doing, which was probably terribly, as Zeus seemed to be trying quite hard initially to keep humanity down. The two made themselves up to look like beggars, whether with makeup or magic, I don't actually know, and dropped by an unsuspecting little town. At each house, they asked for rest, and at each house, no matter how rich the owners were, they were refused. This continued until they came upon the humble cottage of Baucis and Philemon, an old couple. They were invited in with cordiality and offered food and drink. The aged Philemon ran around in a valiant attempt to catch the goose in the house for the guests, to the great bemusement of the two gods. I assume propriety is a bit less important when you're actually a god. Or maybe the old couple were just good sports. And then Baucis came to the realization that the jug of wine she was pouring rather strangely never seemed to empty. I suppose it was around this point that she figured her guests were slightly more than human, and as normal mortals were to be, i.e. not Tantalus, the couple began to get very worried, as, getting visited by Zeus tends to not have the most beneficial effect So the gods take them up a mountain, and Zeus has them turn around, and they get one of those surprises akin to when you get blindfolded, except that it's your entire town has been flooded, and everyone in the town is dead, and your house is now a temple to us, and thank you for being so hospitable. And Baucis and Philemon, being pious, offer to become priests of the temple, and they also get a wish. And what do they do with this wish? Well, being good, non-greedy, non-fate-altering people, they simply ask that they be allowed to die together. But, of course, it can't just be that simple, so when it's time for them to die, they turn into trees and are intertwined together. Oh, joy. Moral of the story is, don't deal with the gods. You either drown in a flood or become a tree. Speaking of punishments, Zeus could get rather creative when it came to dishing them out. A guy named Simonius once tried to impersonate Zeus. Once. He got the works, a clanging chariot, clashing bronze to simulate thunder, and the ancient equivalent of a smoke bomb to make his effects seem more real. People were intimidated. I guess a god riding into your mist in a flurry of supposed lightning can be pretty scary. But Zeus is just like, nah man, you're not me, and zaps him with a lightning bolt. And gone was Simonius. Poof. Just like that. There are also two people who felt that the best way to greet the gods to their homes was to attempt to feed their sons to the gods and see if they would notice. Let's just say that the offense did not go unnoticed. The first man to do so, Tantalus, would be punished in the underworld with a tree and a pool. Except the fruit of the tree would always just be out of the reach of his hand, and the water would recede if he were to try to scoop it out. You could say that he was tantalized. His son, Pelops, would be restored, except for his shoulder, which had to be made of ivory because Demeter, well, that's a story for another time. Pelops would continue the trend of absolutely terrible decision-making that his father started and continue what is known as the curse of the House of Atreus. The second man, Lycaon, would, well, he became a wolf, just like a wolf. Lycaon is quite admired other than that in general, though. Of course, not admired for that. You wouldn't want that to become the standard as a Greek and civilized person. Zeus didn't only punish mortals. The story of poor Prometheus quite aptly explores the wrath of Zeus upon a titan. And while most people know the story of what ultimately led to Prometheus's pretty gruesome everyday trial by eagle, there was another component. So Zeus gave Prometheus the ability to divide the remains of an ox in two in order to determine which parts would go to the gods and which to the humans. Prometheus, being a clever little bugger, placed the meat of animals under the apparently disgusting stomach and the bones under a nice shiny layer of fat. Zeus, being Zeus and sometimes surprisingly superficial, picked the nicer looking pile, and this is why we get to eat meat and why the gods just get the bones. This irritated Zeus, and so he added another tick to the checkboxes of reasons to make Prometheus bound to a mountain and have his organs consumed by an eagle. Quite a worrisome list, to be honest. You know, before Hera, Zeus actually had a wife named Metis, a titan. However, Zeus was worried that the son born to them would overthrow him, just as he did his father and his father did his father. A rather vicious cycle. So Zeus challenges Metis to a game of who can turn into the smallest being, and Metis, thinking the fly is the smallest animal, turns into a fly, and Zeus swallows her. But she is sort of inside him and helps his decision-making, and one day Athena pops out of his head, and it's because Metis is inside Zeus. Yeah, I don't really have an explanation for that one. It's just kind of a cool story. And then, of course, we have Zeus's famous liaisons. We can start with the story of Io. So, Io is just this poor girl who Zeus takes a fancy to. In order to prevent Hera from discovering this indiscretion, he decides the best course of action is to cover the earth in an enveloping cloud and going to visit her. Hera, not being a complete idiot, disperses the cloud, but lo and behold, Zeus is only holding a white cow. He claims that he simply found a very nice looking cow. I can note here that at some point Zeus also turns into a cow to abduct a lady who now names Europe, but yeah, Hera, continuing the trend of her not being a complete idiot, puts her best, perhaps mock, pleading face on and placates Zeus to please give him this very nice locale. Zeus, and by extension Io, is now in a predicament, as he is unable to refuse his wife a gift of such small significance without seeming petty. So, he gives Hera Io as a cow. Hera then places Io under the guard of Argos Panoptes, a creature with 100 eyes so that some can sleep while others can watch her, which I think makes him a creeper. Eventually, someone lulls Argos and all of his eyes to sleep and slays him, and peacocks are made, and Io has more adventures and actually talks to Prometheus, and he gets freed. But yeah. And there's also Semele. Hera, in one way or another, once again discovers Zeus's lover and stealthily enters her room. Semele, being a braggart, tells this mysterious stranger that, OMG, did you know that Zeus is dating me? And Hera is like, well, sure, but how do you know it's Zeus? You should have him reveal his true form to you. And Semele, as it is apparently, is like, hey, that's a pretty good idea. So she asks Zeus, can you promise to do something for me? And Zeus says, sure, I swear by the river Styx that I will fulfill said promise for you. And that's something you're not supposed to take lightly, because if you break that oath, Zeus makes you drink water from the river Styx, which apparently tastes so bad that you have to be silent for 9 years. Although Hera kind of made Echo sort of silent forever out of spite, so I'm not sure how difficult something like that is to undo. And, well, Zeus had to reveal his true form. And let's just say humans don't take particularly well to seeing the true form of a god. Like, it kind of sort of just makes them disintegrate. Which is to say, well, there isn't much of Semele left. But her unborn child did survive, and it was sewn up in Zeus's thigh for safety, and that son is Dionysus. So we have that going for us, I guess. Zeus had other affairs, including one where he turned to a shower of gold in order to become the father of the man who would slay Medusa. He also once turned into an eagle to kidnap a young boy and turn him into the cupbearer of the gods. So, yeah, that was a bit about Zeus. I hope you enjoyed listening and also hope you have a wonderful day. I just want to say that if you are academia and I have grossly oversimplified or misrepresented this topic, I offer sincere apologies. I just enjoy talking about mythology and wanted to keep it sort of light and fun.